Part 7 of the second number of Art in Australia, 1917. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Baldwin Spencer Collection by Bertram Stevens. Illustrated by Baldwin Spencer. Portrait in oils by the late Phillips Fox. Oil painting in the possession of Sir Baldwin Spencer. During the last century, there was a prejudice against Australian products of any kind, and the pictorial arts struggled through their infancy with little more encouragement than that of the governments in 2 or 3 colonies where national galleries had been established. A few men of wealth made collections of pictures of historical interest and paintings of Australian landscape by such artists as Conrad Martens, who looked at our country with eyes trained elsewhere. Australian-born artists had not much prospect of sufficient patronage to enable them to continue painting in Australia, and unless they had independent means, or could add some other occupation, they migrated to England. It is true that until the end of the century there were very few Australian painters whose work was worth collecting. The first of a distinctly national school was Arthur Streeton, whose artistic career virtually dates from 1892. It was a happy chance that the first consistent purchaser of Australian pictures began his collection about this time with one of Streeton's landscapes. The purchaser, Walter Baldwin Spencer, has been for many years Professor of Biology in the Melbourne University. He has earned for himself an eminent place in the world of science by his records and studies of Aboriginal life in Central and Northern Australia. Professor Ernest Scott, in a recent history of Australia, speaks of him as one whose original researches have revolutionized a branch of anthropology. Though born in England, Sir Baldwin Spencer has a very warm affection for Australia and a keen interest in its development. His appreciation of artistic work has been heightened rather than diminished by his scientific studies. The early work of Streeton appealed to him, therefore, with double force, and he continued to buy his pictures until he now has over 40 representative canvases. As other Australian painters came along who showed good craftsmanship, some specimens of their work were added to the collection. It stands to the great credit of Sir Baldwin that he followed his own judgment and selected what he thought good amongst the paintings of young and unknown artists who have since fully proved their merit. He was one of the earliest buyers of Hilda's and Hayson's work, and he quickly recognised the remarkable quality of Norman Lindsay's pen drawings. Young W. B. McInnes found in Sir Baldwin a generous purchaser of those early oil paintings which showed a promise that has already been fulfilled. The artists already mentioned account for the major portion of the Baldwin Spencer collection. It also contains some fine examples of the art of Sid Long, Ford Patterson, George Lambert, Walter Withers and others, nearly 60 artists being represented, all of whom, save 8, are still living. Of course, in some cases, especially that of George Lambert, the best work of these painters is not in the collection. As a whole, however, it does give a very fair idea of contemporary Australian art. The hard-working biology professor has never been the possessor of large means, but, as he says, it does not need a great outlay to acquire fine pictures. The first of his purchases was for 8 guineas. Some have been made for less, and the highest price paid was 100 guineas for Streeton's The Centre of the Empire. For an annual expenditure not greater than what it costs many men to keep a motor car, Sir Baldwin Spencer has adorned his home with things of beauty and acquired an asset of increasing value. The intrinsic interest of the collection to me, great as that is not so important as its effect upon Australian art. That a man of influence in this small community should buy pictures rather than racehorses is in itself a very good thing. Still better that he should choose the work of Australian artists. The example of Sir Baldwin Spencer will be followed by others. Keener interest will be taken in the artistic products of our own country, and perhaps in the near future we will have enough men of taste and judgment to provide the stimulus and the material encouragement without which Australian art will only be a sporadic growth, and the Australian artist an early emigrant to Europe or America. End of Part 7.